Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello friends, Kevin back here from Personal Tutors. The chapter that I'm going to brief today is We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together. The famous words said by a kid within the chapter. It is a story about Mr. Cook and his family going on a voyage to reenact the journey that was actually conducted by Captain James Cook 200 years ago. That was the round the world trip in a boat. Mr. Cook, along with his wife and kids, planned this journey to start from Plymouth in England, going via Cape Town, that is South Africa, and the South Indian Ocean, and reaching Australia, and then going back towards South America, and then coming back through the Atlantic Ocean. The first part of the journey actually went quite well. That was 105,000 kilometers of journey, was actually in the calm sea. They reached Cape Town, were greeted. They actually went ahead and carried two more sailors with them. One was an American and a German. They actually went and proved very helpful for them in the coming part of the story. On the very next day, it all started. Mr. Cook left Cape Town in order to cross the South Indian Ocean, reaching Australia. But, friends, South Indian Ocean, the worst part of the ocean in the world, hardly traveled by any container, any boats, any ships, anything out there. The seas quite rough and far from land. The story is all about the struggle that they go ahead and actually get hit around by waves, the tidal waves, the storm, almost losing hope, almost hoping to die. Yet the children showing extraordinary courage and honing it into the dad, yet rekindling the courage inside him and making him put in effort so that they can survive. And it really paid off. They actually reach an island called Isle Amsterdam and were greeted by a little number of 28 inhabitants there as well, thus surviving the ordeal. It's a story about courage. It's a story about family oneness. That's the heading says. We are not afraid to die if we can all be together. These were the words when Mr. Cook almost goes ahead and loses the boat. It was capsizing. They had to pump the water out, taking turns. Yet the youngest child, the son of Mr. Cook, narrates these lines and gives him the courage about oneness of the family being together. I'll be going ahead and discussing a few question and answers today so that you can have it for your help. What was the object behind the writers undertaking the journey? Obviously, as mentioned earlier, the writer undertook the journey to reenact the 200-year-old voyage conducted by Captain James Cook. Describe the boat which was made for undertaking the voyage. The boat's name was Wave Walker. It was actually a 23-meter, 30-ton vessel made professionally built and tested in the rough waters in England so that they could go ahead and face up the weather in the oceans as well. What are Mayday calls? Why was the ship getting no replies to its Mayday calls? Mayday calls are generally sent out by ships who are into turmoil or meet any disaster or get stuck into any storm in the sea while sailing. The Mayday calls recently made by the Wave Walker weren't answered because they weren't heard by any of the ships nearby, since the part in which they were sailing was hardly traveled by any other vessel ever. What did Sue say when she was asked by her father why she had not complained much about her grave injuries to the first instance. Sue, when confronted by her father about not telling about the deep cuts and a grave injury on the forehead to her father, simply said she did not want to go ahead and make him involved into the petty injuries that she had, rather than she wanted him to go ahead and create a chance for them to survive by taking over the wheel and finishing the honing the damages done to the hull of the ship as well. Comment on the mood of the sea on 2nd January 2010. How did the writer and his family and the crewmen prepare for that? On the night of 2nd of January 2010, the waters really began to rise. The ship every time moved on a wave and saw another rough wave coming up to them. They really braced the hull, they tied in the ropes, they actually went ahead and dropped the storm jib and lashed the heavy mooring rope in the loop across the stern, then double lashed everything and went through the life raft drill as well. Now friends, this is some of the things that we need to go ahead while keep on a track or a checklist while going on a sail. The narrator and his partners, they double checked everything and went ahead through the checklist to check out and get ready for the storm. What happened at 6 p.m. on 2nd of January? Suddenly at 6 p.m. the wind stopped, the sky grew darker, and actually went a cloud of darkness covered the ship. Looking back again, the narrator, to his horror, found that it wasn't a cloud of darkness but a 15 to 30 meter wave towering upon them and ready to lash upon the boat. List the steps taken by the captain to protect the boat when the rough weather began and to check the flooding of the water in the ship. Point A, the narrator actually went ahead and slowed the boat. He actually slowed the boat so that the storm jib could be dropped down and the stern could be tied hard. The raft drill was performed by him again and again, and it was double checked. Larry and Herb, the people who actually were in the ship and were picked from Cape Town, went ahead and kept on pumping the water that was actually filling in the boat and eventually would have gone ahead and capsized it. How did they pass the first leg of the journey? The first leg of the journey from the west coast of Africa to of the city of Cape Town was actually very peaceful and calmful, and they never expected anything harsh to happen. For them it would have been a pleasant journey across the sea with the fine weather out there. Who were Larry and Herb, and what role did they play? Wow, the crew member Larry Vigil was an American, Herb Seeger was from Switzerland. They actually played an important role in pumping the water out by taking in chances, and rigorously after 36 hours of the pumping, they went ahead and brought the ship back to the normal state. Why and when did the captain send mayday calls? Was there some response? Obviously, when the captain was thrown off the ship, he accepted his death. Yet, the another wave threw him back on the wave walker, and there he was struggling to find his wife and his kids. And his kids went ahead and gave him courage. Yet the captain, the narrator, went ahead and sent a few mayday calls. Yet the mayday calls weren't recognized by any passerby ship or weren't answered or replied, because hardly any ship or boat traveled through the area that they were traveling. The waters there were really, really rough. Thus, they weren't comfortable in getting any response by sending up the mayday calls. Highlight the tremendous courage and stoicism showed by the two children during the struggle of the ship to keep from sinking. Wow, a lovely question. The two kids, in spite of being young, would have started screaming and yelling and howling had they encountered such situation. But to our amazement, the two kids actually showed an exemplary example of courage by not giving out tantrums, rather going ahead and helping their parents to cope up with the conditions physically as well as mentally. The lines that the young lad says over here is actually a gift to the narrator, because according in the narrator's words, he actually goes ahead and finds courage and solace by listening to the puny lines uttered by a young little child who was hardly or barely enough to face up the situations at the present time. Describe the behavior of the narrator and his family, particularly of his children, John and Sue, during the voyage. As mentioned in the brief earlier, the two kids were not afraid at all because they believed in their dad. They actually went ahead and gave him words of wisdom by telling him that if the family is together, they need not fear any of the calamity or any of the damages done. Mrs. Cook, his wife, too went ahead and supported the narrator's actions of going ahead and pumping the water out, handling the wheel, taking care of the kids, bringing in all the stuff together that was almost thrown off by the waves. This shows a bondness of the family and exceptional behavior of the kids as well. How does the story suggest that optimism helps to endure the direct stress? Obviously, the narrator had gone ahead and lost all hopes of getting revived when he was thrown off the ship. When he came back to the ship, he found that the stern was broken and the water was getting to the hull and all hell broke loose. Yet the narrator, when spoke to his daughter, got a few words of wisdom that actually gave him courage, that took all out the despair, the worry, the issues faced by a normal family in such conditions. Usually the questions are given as like, these are objective questions like, what picture does a lesson draw on lives at sea? Lives at sea can be uncertain, my friends. It really can be uncertain. As the narrator says, he had fine, calm journey till the west coast of South Africa up till Cape Town. Yet the second phase of the journey gave a total different approach. It was the worst nightmare that any sailor faces or would like to face ahead. At the end of the story, the courage, the oneness, the uniqueness of the family really paid off, and they went ahead and reached the Isle Amsterdam, where they were greeted by the inhabitants, yet getting a chance and a hope to repair the ship and moving ahead with the journey or reclining it. If you want to know something more about us, you can just click the button about us. If you want to know something about the topic that I've mentioned, you can just ask us online, or you can get the details in a pen drive as well. So signing off, this is Kevin Lopez. Thank you very much. Do take care.